We have been hugely frustrated at the way in which government has done this in all areas of government. We were talking about education earlier, where they changed the nomenclature in exactly that way. And if you look at what they did when we introduced the 13 amendments to the infrastructure bill, and one of those was about the water protection. Now let me get this the right way around. I can't remember what it was, areas or zones. And they gave commitments. They wouldn't sign up to the amendments. They wouldn't allow the amendments to be on the face of the bill. But they gave commitments that they would introduce their own amendments at a later stage to put it in place. And of course, when the bill came through, what they did was they actually changed the definition of water protection zones and areas. And I can't remember which way they flipped it. But precisely to exclude the areas that we were concerned about. So this is a trick that government does over and over again. Partly because of these changes in definition and the way in which the government uses semantics. Please take it from me that when we're talking about anti-fracking, the original intention here was precisely to stop the sort of drilling that we're talking about in the
unconventional extraction.
Unconventional extraction.
When we frame our economic policies, we will always take into account the environmental impact going forward. So that's about greening the economy and getting ourselves weaned off fossil fuels.
The way in which we moved the policy from a policy that said a moratorium to one that said a ban, and that was what I announced back in September 2016, I think it was, at party conference then, was quite simply because technically people were able to say, well, it is possible to do this with environmental safeguards. However difficult it may have been to apply those safeguards in any given situation, and however much companies might have got round it, technically it might have been possible. But the moment that you had the Paris Agreement and the knowledge that the world was now set on a course of regulation that would bring us down to as close to 1.5 degrees above the historic background as possible, and that we had 5 times more oil and gas reserves identified than the world could use if it was to meet that target, that was the time at which you then had to say, no, we now need to be setting in place with clarity the targets, and this is not an anti-business thing. If you're a business, if you're an oil and gas business, if you're an energy company, you need to know that over the next 30 years or whatever it is, you're going to get a return on your investment.
We need clean
so
jobs.
what we were saying to the industry is, you will not get a return on this investment, and that was the point of making that announcement. We're not the government at the moment. We weren't able to say you've got to stop tomorrow, but what we can say is, look, we've given you due notice. If we become the government in a few years' time, be on notice that if you make that investment now, you're going to be left with stranded assets. And that was the best way that we could then signal to those companies that this was a really stupid investment for their financial committees to determine. And absolutely, we have to get the world on the right trajectory, and we should not be investing in fossil fuels. We should be investing in renewables. We should be growing an economy that is a low carbon, moving to a zero carbon economy. And you don't do that unless you give out the right message. And that was something that even in opposition we could do, and that actually the Paris Agreement enabled us to make that signal, because the world then had set the regulatory framework for achieving it.